Welcome to this week's edition of More Insights and Strategy Game Time Tech Podcast. We're on episode 18. I'm Robert Kramer, joined by Melody Brew, both VP and principal analysts at the firm, and we're in the sports technology vertical. So this week we're going to be zeroing in on the tech shaping the U.S. Open. What's fresh, what's different, and why it matters for this Grand Slam. So we're looking ahead at the story lines and innovations also for the NFL season and the Formula One seasons coming up. So let's do a quick disclaimer, then we'll jump into it. This show is for information and entertainment purposes only. While we'll be discussing publicly traded companies on the show, its content should not be taken as investment advice. So Mel, how are we doing today? Let's get started with things. How are you?
Yeah,
Good to see you.
good. Glad we're back on it with our podcast and in action. So yeah, a lot of good fun stuff to talk about.
So let's talk about the US Open. We were both there last year. You're going to be going there this year. And this year,
Okay.
they're running some more advanced technology than they have in the past couple years. So you're going to be seeing it firsthand. And a lot of it deals with IBM and what they're going to be doing relation to the scoreboards and stats and really the fans, and also how it kind of helps the players themselves. What's your thoughts on this year's US Open? Are you excited to go, first of all?
Yes, it's fun. I mean, it's funny. Last year, somebody told me that Flushing Meadows is a whole vibe, and I was like, "Huh, that's an interesting take." But it is a vibe. It's very different than Wimbledon, which I was also at this year. It's a little bit more rowdy. It's a little less, I guess, less traditional than Wimbledon, but it's interesting. And as far as the technology goes, IBM it backs both, and it's been really interesting to watch the improvements. I think we talked a little bit about this when we talked about Wimbledon, but it's like every year they're looking to the next thing, and so there are some new things this year, some things that haven't been announced yet, and we'll be able to talk about that in a week or two. But in general, if we kind of give like an overview, so IBM's operating the tournament on a hybrid cloud with Red Hat OpenShift and their Watson X platform. So the combination of this allows them to manage these like really large spikes in online activity, up to 5,000% spike without any disruption. So that's a big kind of on the infrastructure side of things, what's happening.
And I think that people should know that AI is doing more than just basic number crunching. It's providing an enormous amount of information at a different level that we've actually seen in the past.
Yeah, so we did see a lot last year with like the generative AI commentary feature. This adds the text and audio explanation to highlight clips. So one of the things that getting very specific instead of just labeling like that was a big serve, it explains the match situation, like serving at the break point after a long rally. Then there's also match chat, which actually lets fans ask for player stats or records or records during a match, and they get responses. So it's actually like a little bit more interactive.
Which is great because it makes it easier for the fans to follow the match and gives the experienced fans more context. But IBM isn't the only company with the tech on display.
Yeah. So okay, I've done this at several different stadiums now. Have you done this where you walk in with the facial recognition?
I have. Isn't it kind of like global entry? If you're traveling.
Yes, yes, yes. So they're using it at the US Open, they're using Wicket's facial recognition. Wicket's been around for a long time, but this it's first time that it's being used at the US Open. So without having to scan a ticket, players, staff, media can use it, and it reduces the time at security. I've gone to baseball games and gotten there like where there's just big, massive lines. This happened just recently in Denver when we went to see the Padres at the Rockies, and these big, massive lines, and we were able to just walk right straight to the front. It sees your picture. Sometimes it catches a really funny picture of you because you're walking and looking, like, but it's kind of part of the fun. But the thing is, it really does like kind of reduce that time to get through the door. So it gets people in and getting them like to get to all the things they're actually there for. The other
Right.
thing, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, is the security aspect of this is people, I think that there are a lot of people who aren't necessarily trying this out yet because they think it's facial recognition or whatever, but it actually tokenizes the images. It doesn't store it to the cloud, so it's a quick just capture only for identification noted
Mhm.
purposes, and it's tokenized so that there's no like facial recognition kind of identity stuff that's happening. Colorado just passed a law on this that they're banning it in some places, and I think there might be a little bit of like an overcorrection there, which
Mhm.
we can get into more of that at some another point.
Well, which is really nice for the fans to get in and mostly get into the stadium and make it easier. But
Yes.
also, I mean, has added the AI draw analysis, which I thought was also interesting as well.
Yeah. So I love all of this, the data that they bring together with rankings, player form, all the history, all even match predictions. They give their favorability score for each tournament. So it's great for fans because it's kind of like a fun, follow along. Is it right? I know you and I were kind of looking at our apps last year and checking to see like, oh, did they get it right? And like, somebody's ahead and then all of a sudden they lose and we're like, wow, IBM got it right with all this data. So it also allows coaches and players to review this before matches. So there's a lot of value there.
Well, which is interesting because what you said, the value is the value there. But when you like your sons play sports and we've played sports, you always want to exploit the weakness of your opponent, right? So right. So if someone's like got a bad backhand, if you hit, this should tell them if you hit, six of your big forehands to their backhand, chances of you winning that point is 98%. So what are you gonna do? Exploit it. So
Yeah,
I think the value is definitely there. And it also has big emphasis on how it helps the fans because it gives
right.
them more. So how does that help from that perspective? Additional value.
And for the fans, it really just it means more context, right? So like you get clearer storylines as the match progresses. It also gives you the details of matches that you normally wouldn't have access to. So say,
Mhm.
this one match, if you're not there live in person, and even if you are there live in person, there's dozens of courts. You can't see every match. But if you're not there, and you may want to see a match, there's only a certain number of them that can be televised, but they're actually able to do all of them using the AI generated with human help. There are a whole room of editors in there, as we saw, to get more of those out to fans.
So as we look forward to the U.S. Open, which you are, and what are you looking to get out of it? What are you excited to see the most, besides the matches or the technology, seeing how the facial recognition, seeing how the fan experience is a little different, or just all in all, how you bridge the gap between technology and nostalgia and enjoying, and is it is it overtaking the game? Because like we always talk about, like I love the McEnroe days and how he
Yeah.
playing, like you don't want it to be too like like sterile, but at the same time exciting, but not miss a call. So I guess, sorry, long-winded question. Like what's going to be exciting next week for you?
Well, I think the short answer is the Aperol spritz.
I do remember those because I was there last year.
That was really fun, really good. I love a good Aperol spritz. But yeah, no, I mean, I think, again, these are proving grounds for this major technology. So IBM has actually done a great job on, if you look at, IBM has the whole skills builder website where you can go and get certified in certain things, but you can also just take it as a sort of like these are real kind of real life ways to learn about things like AI. And they've got a great explainer about like using tennis to explain AI. So these really are proving grounds for this type of technology. And if they can make these kind of decisions easier for players, coaches, fans, you can translate that to an enterprise environment and take any data and kind of put that into that same, like situation of you've got a whole lot of historical data, current data, and making future predictions, and the technology is the same. So it's just a little bit more of like a fun, exciting way to show the technology, but it really is all about the enterprise technology.
Great. Well,
and the
we'll,
Aperol spritz.
well, hopefully, you'll have a good time. Any predictions?
I don't. I don't have any predictions of how many Aperol spritzes I'll drink, but I'll tell you later.
Good one.
Um,
All
s
righty.
yeah, it'll be fun, and and we'll definitely do a wrap up on that one. But so moving on to NFL, the 2025 season and their technology rollout. I mean, honestly, I feel like this could be kind of one of the most comprehensive tech transformation we've seen in sports.
Well, absolutely. What's notable is the scale and sophistication here. Sony Hawkeye system. If you're familiar with that, it's being used at the U.S. Open for the lines.
Yeah.
It's interesting that it hasn't been implemented yet in the NFL because there was some calls, that we can probably go back and remember specifically the Buffalo Bills game where
Yeah.
against the Kansas City Chiefs, and there was a call there. But it's basically the Hawkeye system is going to replace the chain gangs for first down measurements, which is a big deal because you're going to be able to have, Sony's, they perfected this, but across other industries like manufacturing and industrial applications for years, but they're going to bring this, into the chains, and they're installing all these different cameras per stadium, and it's going to help cut down the measurements. They say from 70 seconds to 30 seconds, but I would just think it'd be a lot more than that because by the time those guys run out there and they measure and go back, I would think it'd be minutes. But I'm excited
Yeah.
to see that because I do think that that's going to help speed up the game. But it's hard to get those calls exact, and sometimes they're inches, and it's a miss. So
Yeah,
I think it'll be exciting.
sometimes fewer than inches. Yeah, I don't think you're holding on to any grudges on that with the Kansas City. um, but yeah, I mean, it really is the downstream effects of this are actually significant. We think like, okay, well, it's a 60-minute or 60-second thing. I think you're right. I think it's longer than that, or 70 seconds is what the stat is to 30 seconds. But the faster measurement means that there are more plays per game, which is like that impacts a lot of things. Think about like player fatigue, advertising revenue. There's a lot of things that I think like impacts those minutes
Mhm.
that you're sparing by doing that. And again, we've talked about this, like how long these players work to get these things right, to not get them right is a bummer. And for fans too, obviously. But Sony also has a really interesting. This is I don't know if this is brand new this year, but I know that there's been kind of some improvements, and I think they were at least testing it out last year, if not fully using it. But the coach headsets have
Mhm.
really the quality of the communication that happens on the field is really, I think, a major growth area right now. So Sony's headsets, they're like industrial grade noise cancellation. They can handle like 100 plus decibel environments. So like muting anything, um, proofing that you would have like
Mhm.
in construction environments. So this really could change coaching strategies. I mean, think about how fans try to like scream and make it so that they can't communicate on the field, and but better communication on the field obviously means like more complex play calling, potentially faster adjustments. It's just clear communication everywhere is is obvious is always a good thing.
Yeah, so speaking of the communication, the player's helmet has a lot of upgrades too, and making things a little bit smaller within it. Like they've fit digital mobile radio receivers into the helmets without adjusting the padding. So there's apps for equipment managers to monitor all devices. So IoT devices management's a little bit more, in play this year, which is great. So there's, like you said, it's about communicating with the players. But what we're seeing here is Sony's really pushing the boundaries of what's possible with these environments, because I would think those environments would be a challenging feat for them, especially with the helmets. So between also the crowd noise, the weather, and the physical demands that are going on. So I think it's a good step in that direction for sure.
Yeah, I love the image though of like the actual phone that is a hardwired phone on the sideline and then picking it up and talking, and the same thing like in the bullpen when they pick up the phone and they talk. So I kind
Remember
of don't
that?
want that. I kind of don't want that to go away, but yeah, the
That was fun. Like in baseball, they pick up the phone, they get the guy coming in, the lefty or whatever. And I mean,
yeah.
those are the things that I think are really neat, and sorry to deviate, but I think it's fun to have those aspects of the games. Like remember the guy, following the coach around with the wire, always picking it up from the
Yes.
sidelines for football. So anyway,
Yeah. Yeah.
so now we're shifting to data analytics a little bit, and there's some things that AWS is powering, with the digital athlete platform, where I guess we're talking, 500 million data points per season processed through machine learning algorithms. So the predictive analytics applied to the human performance is a big deal. So they're running millions of simulations of how they can run risks or prevent injury risk. So all 32 teams are getting these reports to help them through this. They do this in other sports as well. Major League Baseball gives the stats to all the teams, so they're giving this predicting injury risk types of data. So, what do you think about that?
Yeah, if you look at just across the board what AWS is doing with the NFL, there's so many things going on, but I feel like this kind of digital athlete platform is really interesting. And the implications of this, again, kind of tying it back to like where can this also help? And when we're obviously like sports is fun, it's always fun, right? But like when you really actually look at what are the implications beyond the sport to this, like the scale of what AWS is doing here. So they are saying that they can predict with 80% accuracy that a player is entering a high risk injury window. So does that give you like it's time to take a rest, right? It's time
Right.
to bench that player. How does that affect, the competition? How does it affect giving the coaches these data-driven insights? I mean, it really affects how they can like manage all of their player workloads. So if you look at that again to like beyond just the sports analytics and to kind of predictive modeling that they're doing for supply chain optimization, manufacturing quality control, this is where again, these types of innovations on the field are able to really be this major proving ground for what they can do beyond the playing field.
Absolutely. And they all relying on the data foundation that Zebra Technologies has been quietly building since 2014. I actually worked with them years ago, but
Okay.
it's a really good company. But that same tech they deploy for warehouse management and supply chain tracking, it's a coin-sized RFID chips, and they put it in the shoulder pads, and the football is capturing 200 data points per play. Um, at 10 readings per second, which sounds like a lot. But here's where the precision requirement differs. The RFID has a 6-inch error margin for ball placement. So that's acceptable for generating statistics, but really not for officiating. So Sony's computer vision for precision measurements will take hold there. But so there's different tools for different jobs. But this is another technology that's being used. I think it's going to be helpful, those data points.
That's really interesting. But it's interesting that they were able to identify that, this tool it's good for doing these things, like those being able to monitor what's happening with the helmets and the shoulder pads, and they're actually able to really protect the players more. But they recognize that it's not quite there to be able to actually make the official call. I mean, that's I don't want to like, be overly promotional here, but like that's actually what everybody's talking about, right? With like responsible AI. What can it do? What can't it do? Where's a human better? Where's, right?
Good point.
Um, but yeah, so I want to move on to kind of the fan experience front because we talked a little bit about what Adobe is doing with what was it with Premier League. I'm like, had a
Yep.
brain. So Adobe also has a partnership with the NFL, and this actually is, I think, very cool for fans, but also for creators. So this is where we see kind of how content creation and fan engagement technology is really scaling. And I don't know that we've seen even a glimpse of where this can go because think about the number of content creators that can deploy like all of these various apps. They use Photoshop, Premiere Pro, Adobe Express, which is my personal favorite just because it's really easy to use for the non-pros. Um, for this real-time content creation. So they have a partnership with the NFL for this, across NFL.com, the NFL app, and then also OnePass. So they also are using Adobe Journey Optimizer to personalize fan experience based on their behavioral data. So when you arrive at the stadium, you're going to get the content. Obviously, if you have this, your ticket is tied to you. If you're using somebody else's ticket, there are venues that are solving this issue, but obviously the person who's sitting in the seat isn't always the person who bought the ticket. But based on what they know with fan experience and their behavioral data, when you arrive at the stadium, you get these location based kind of preference driven content that's tailored specifically to you and your interest and your past behaviors. Maybe not always the right person if we don't get the like finding out, who is actually in that seat, who's holding that ticket. And we've talked about this before that the Intuit Dome handles that very well because your ticket has to be on your phone, so they actually know where you are. Um, but it is it's getting much more sophisticated in terms of what kind of things that they can generate for fans.
And I like that because that's a sophisticated customer journey, and it's very helpful to, like what you said, like the fan experience.
Yeah. So the with Adobe Firefly with Gen AI, they're able to also do like international content localization, content scaling across all global markets. So you can a creator can take one piece of content and automatically adapt it for different regions. So that's languages, cultural context. So this really could massively change fan engagement
Mhm.
metrics. I mean, if you think about like personalized experience typically drive like 20 to 30% higher engagement rates. But this also like kind of ties into this broader infrastructure story of how do you do that? How do you like identify the person, do, all this kind of journey optimization, but in real time with the right person, offer them the right things. I mean, it's a complicated it's not an easy thing to do. And I think that Adobe is doing a great job in terms of following that journey, but also being part of that creative process.
Yeah, which brings us to the backbone that makes it all possible, which is the infrastructure layer, which is a big deal. And all this content and communication relies on this network infrastructure. And so that's Verizon's private 5G networks across the stadiums, with represents really a massive deployment. So this
Yeah.
is not a consumer network. These are private wireless solutions handling, what we've talked about through this show, the coach communications, the point of sale systems, the
Yeah.
ticketing. So this private network is completely necessary to guarantee that bandwidth with low latency, for mission critical applications. So that coach to coach communication, the players, they can't fail. There can't be network congestion. So this is a big part of the game, which is this infrastructure and how the coaches are communicating with their team and all their audiences that they need to back up in the booths and things of that nature, and the players on the field.
Yeah. There's been so much talk about the difference that 5G can make in these stadiums and the upgrades. And it's funny that you said it's not just like a consumer grade 5G. And I'm like, well, good, because sometimes the consumer grade 5G is just not very good.
Right.
And there is a massive, just had a big, huge thunderstorm come in. Well, we're live, so here we go. Um, But yeah, so these infrastructure investments and Will Townsend, who is our infrastructure guy, the guru, he's been talking about this for years that these stadiums need these major upgrades. They're like they need to be able to do renovations like Levi Stadium just did the $200 million renovation, which includes a bunch of different Wi-Fi 6 access points, bigger displays, that all of the basically all of the things that require that kind of that infrastructure are getting upgraded. MetLife's Life Stadium also just added 5G capacity. They upgraded a bunch of digital signage. So there's just a lot of things. I think that the accessibility tech is becoming like a very competitive differentiator. Um, and all of this does require just a ton of infrastructure.
Yeah, yeah. And so just kind of going to the player safety, because I think that's a big deal. We both talk about it all the time, but the safety is showing some serious engineering work, specifically the helmets. Using carbon, L1 3D printers with EPU 45 material. I'm not sure exactly what that is, but it's an industrial additive manufacturing. The Guardian Sports has Guardian caps that reduce the concussions by 52%. Riddell's market dominance at 77% share comes from manufacturing capabilities with their helmets, which is the Zion 3D helmets, which uses proprietary scanning tech for custom fitting. So all these things that are being done, I think are some of the same approaches used with automotive manufacturers for their premium products. So I think we're seeing safety being more of a priority each year.
Yeah.
So
It's crazy when you think about it. Like, I mean, first of all, when you think about that, like there were times when helmets were basically just kind of a little bonnet, or maybe no helmets at all. I'm not that old, but I'm old. But now that these actual players in different positions have different types of helmets, and it's really creating like a major feedback loop, not just for their safety, but these like impact sensors and things like mouth guards and these next generation helmet designs. It's just really, again, it's like this continuous improvement with the data analytics. Um, I also think, and this was something we learned when talking to AWS about this type of stuff, that the trickle down effect is actually super significant here. It's not just about these players' safeties, but the younger kids, like kids even in like Pop Warner and high school football, they're getting this same data and the same technology because of what we're learning from this type of stuff. So we're not just like preventing injuries now, and we're preventing future injuries. And I think that's just it's so important. And of course, as a boy mom with a bunch of kids who play sports like that, that is not trivial. That is like a really, really incredible and like needed information. So anyway, we have we're getting to time, and we've got some other things that we got to move on to. But I
yep.
think again, all of this data, the networking, everything, it's really shown that NFL has really become like a major technology testing ground. Um, but yeah, let's move on to F1 because
Yeah.
I think yeah, we got a lot to go through.
I haven't been to one. You said you have, and you said you think it's fantastic.
Yes, I went to the Grand Prix here in Austin. It's loud, so I do think a lot of a lot of the things actually that they're starting to integrate with these new cars, they're really interesting because hopefully it'll cut down on some of that noise. But it is a blast. I mean, it's so interesting. If you look back, kind of 20 years ago, it's almost a different sport, right? Like it still is loud, believe me. But like the now cars those V10 engines, they're loud, they're raw, they're mechanical, they're like cars were lighter, the aerodynamics were simpler, electronics like pretty basic. Teams had some telemetry, but like the strategy was really mainly a human decision.
Yeah, and so for the fans, the options were pretty limited, it seems like back then. You could
Yeah.
just go to the track, maybe get a pit walk, get an autograph, watch whatever broadcast that was given to you, and that was really it.
hmm Yeah. And now you have everything has changed. I mean, everything from the cars with like the different hybrid cars, and then they've got hundreds of sensors feeding real-time data. The AI has a big role in the design and the race simulations, predicting issues before they happen. I mean, Cadence, companies like Cadence and others, they're running these advanced simulations and optimizing aerodynamics like long before the car even hits the track. I actually got to see a live demo here in Austin last year or the year before. Pretty incredible. They can identify like there might be a pebble in the road, on the track 100 yards ahead, and they're able to make adjustments to that. And that could shave off, you know, even a millisecond can make the difference in these types of races.
which is fantastic. And the fan experience has changed dramatically. Like you were just saying, it's a totally different sport. So the Grand Prix Plaza in Las Vegas is a perfect example of 100,000 square feet, open year round with pro simulators, pit crew challenges, historic cars, even karting on part of the strip circuit. So I think that just fantastic, and the live data displays, I think it's just a totally different game. I think that most sports are doing this because they're trying to bring the fans more in and then show that sponsorship in a different light from the IT perspective of those vendors that are taking part of this.
Yeah, for sure. I think at the events, it feels just more like a festival, you know, it's all kinds of things going on. But then at home, you get those like helmet cam views, the AR overlays. It's just much more kind of lifelike for people who aren't there. And I think one of the things that is actually like kind of a major thing that a lot of these leagues are trying to do is capture a younger audience. So
Hmm.
when you have things like that where you feel like you're in the car, where you feel like, you know, you just watched like a life or death takeover, you know, these types, that's that's attracting kind of more the YouTube generation.
Yeah, and so like AWS's track designer lets people build custom circuits and get AI predicted lap times. And the team apps, and this is similar to even like the U.S. Open on how you can look at the different matches and stuff like that. But like Ferrari with IBM deliver personalized race recaps, live stats, and polls. It's that same IBM technology that I just mentioned. Also runs across and behind the scenes analytics to help teams react faster during races. I mean, the stats are so, tactical and, complex, but helpful to give the fans and the teams just so much more information to change the way that their strategy might, help based upon all the conditions and really like the format of, I guess, how the track is and how the car handles and the weight of it and all those great things.
Yeah. There's so much data that goes into it, but there's also just this like so because of all that data, there's all of this high performance computing and edge systems that have to process all of that race telemetry on site. You can't, I think we talked about this, you know, in terms of like the Sailmaster Grand Prix. You can't risk a millisecond in situations like this. So this is it's a data processing, but it's also a safety issue where that there can't be any lag. So
Mhm.
you know, both Lenovo and Qualcomm have this trackside connectivity for data flows instantly between the car and the pit. Excuse me, still getting over a little something, and broadcast teams. So I think everything, so much of it has evolved.
And there's so many vendors involved with the cars that help them be better because those have changed over the years. And so this year has brought tighter rules, new suspension, extra weight for the cooling systems. So safety's, a big deal, and especially with crashes and debris. So and sustainability is being more pronounced, with the E10 biofuels and the regional race calendars, which I don't know why that would be such a, I don't know, you kind of put two and two together and you make it where they don't have to travel across the world is,
Yeah.
you put them together, recycling and greener cooling tech. So I think that sustainability is a big deal, and it's gonna be more pronounced, I think, as we go to the years after this.
Yeah, and I think, you know, with the 2030 zero carbon targets, I think that's kind of where we're headed with all of this. Like cars will be lighter, smaller, built with even more sustainable materials.
Mhm.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, I think that's what's making this year super interesting. And I also think it's a good look ahead at like what are they're racing to win right now, but they also have to look towards like what do they need to get right for next year. So I think we could see a totally different competitive order a year from now. But this is kind of a small glimpse, because the joke about like make it look like a NASCAR because there's so many different logos. I love that actually it's no longer just logos. It's not like a Krispy Kreme logo on the car. It's actually like Cadence because they're doing this, or Qualcomm because they're doing this, or Adobe because they're doing this. They're actually involved in the sport and actually the solutions to make them win.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty exciting. So if you look back 20 years ago, like we talked about in the show, it was 2005 was probably more raw performance, where 2025 is advanced tech with deeper fan access, and 2026 will take advantage of that tech and go beyond utilizing that tech. So companies driving will become, like you said, smarter, faster, more sustainable. But I'm interested to see how they advance with electronic. I think one of the things that they're trying to do is use fuel and electric to actually move those cars faster than they are today and be more sustainable. So that'll be exciting.
Good stuff ahead. Well, that was a lot to talk about. We're a little bit over time, but um, we actually just kind of scratched the surface. I think we've got a whole lot more going on in sports tech that we will be talking about each week. So keep up with us as we delve deeper into all the tech that's powering many of today's favorite pastimes. Until then, thanks for watching. Please hit and like the subscribe button and let us know if there are any topics that you want us to cover, anything you're interested in, or anything you don't want us to cover. Maybe we talk about too much. I don't know. If you also like an Aperol spritz, I'd like to know. I'm not going to bring you one, but I just want to know.
Thank you. And we'll see you next time.
All right. Bye bye.